Hey everyone, welcome to the By Blacks channel. I am Camille Dundas, editor-in-chief. So excited to have Marci Ian with me today. Marci is closing out 2020 on a high note. In the midst of a pandemic, she managed to pivot her career in a major way, going from television journalist to author and elected federal member of parliament representing Toronto Centre. Marci, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question
I
these
know.
days, isn't it, Camille?
We're gonna talk about the book off script.
Yeah,
I have to ask, like, how
yeah.
are you?
I'm well. I had goals and I knew I had a 36-day campaign and it was pedal to the metal and just doing all that I could, all that we could as a team. And when you're just going and you don't stop, you don't realize maybe just how tired you are, how drained you are. So that's starting now. That's
Hmm.
starting now because it's just been go, 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 go
Yeah,
since mid-September.
yeah. And I mentioned off the top, you went from journalist to politician. And I was thinking, you've been a journalist pretty much all your adult life. And this is kind of a sharp turn for you. And when you hear yourself referred to as former journalist, how does that feel? How are you dealing with this identity change?
I get a little queasy
Mhm.
when the word former comes before journalist. I think, once a journalist, always a
I feel
journalist,
the same way.
right? And so I will always call myself a journalist who now does politics,
Mhm.
basically. But I find that there is, um, you know, uh, a shared skill set between the two.
Mhm.
It's all about connectivity, right, Camille? It's all about connecting with people and doing a lot of listening. Except now in the political realm, there's action as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, what most people are wondering is, how on earth did she go from talk show host to parliament? Because no one just wakes up and be like, you know what I'm going to
I
do today?
know.
Run for the Liberal Party. How did this happen?
Listen,
Walk us, walk
listen,
us through it,
listen.
please.
If you had asked me or told me 6 months ago, if you'd said, Marci, let me just lay out your life. This is what you're going to be doing. I know you're doing a talk show now and you just wrote a book, but
Mhm.
here's where you're going to be. I would have said absolutely not. But here's what happened. And if I go back to the actual point, it was the murder of George Floyd,
Mhm.
the killing of George Floyd.
Mhm.
Because at that point, while I had talked about being Black in Canada, being a Black woman and mother and journalist in Canada a lot, on the social and elsewhere, when that happened, having to explain that to my kids,
Mhm.
and then as the only Black panelist on the social, having to explain my feelings and how I felt about that to an audience, and then continuing to explain and to talk about systemic racism and to talk about Black Lives Matter, to talk about all these things, it wasn't, I don't want to say an awakening, but it was in every sense, really, of the word. I wanted to do more. And as I started using my voice in that way, people started getting in touch and saying, don't stop, because the stories you tell aren't just your stories, they're our stories. So keep speaking, because you can speak in places where others can't. So don't stop. And then this opportunity came about where a riding, where uh, I was born in St. Jamestown, opened up. And I was asked to be part of the Liberal team. And I have to tell you, Camille, I couldn't say no.
Mhm.
Usually I'm a really decisive person. And if someone asks a question, I can say yes, no, here's why. But for some reason, a question that, normally I probably would have said, no, not for me. I could not say no. So I had to think about it. And I knew I had to think about it. And I talked to people that were close to me. I talked to my family. And I think what it came down to was not just speaking about things, but actioning them and actually having a chance to be at a table that, frankly, not a lot of Black people, not a lot of people of color are at, because there's something about lived experience. There's something about being at a table and being able to say, wait a minute, you don't have to go on hearsay. I can tell you what I went through. I can tell you what I lived. Here's what happened to me. That's a very, very different scenario. And so while, yeah, I was a little bit afraid. It was a huge change. Didn't see it coming. I thought, if not now, when?
Mm-hmm.
It's something I have to do, at least try to do, to represent and serve well. And service is always something that's been important to me as well.
Now, speaking of fear, and I've said this to you before, when I open my Instagram and I see this announcement from Marci Ian running in the Liberal Party, I went through this roller coaster of emotions. First, I screamed. I was like, what? Yes, amazing. And then in less than 10 seconds, I felt my stomach clench. Out of my heart sank because I felt this immediate nervousness and fear for you.
Yeah.
Because social media has been frankly cruel and brutal to you. And I thought, my gosh, this is going to put Mars under an even bigger spotlight. And in public service, there's zero privacy. You're a servant to the people and they feel entitled to know every detail of your life and to comment on it. And we talked on the phone, and I remember I said this to you, and you said to me, yes, but we can't let fear get in the way of progress. Talk a little bit about how you've handled fear in your life and your career.
I truly believe that. And I think when people come for you, when they do so on social media or anywhere else, you've hit a nerve. You've done something right, or you're doing something right, so you can't stop. That's an indicator for me. And oftentimes that came about when I spoke about race, when I talked about being Black, when I talked about not having a Black boss ever in my almost 30-year career, and what that means about the state of media in this country. It's so, as soon as you talk about race, you're going to hit a nerve. And I'm happy to hit that nerve. I'm more than happy to hit that nerve. I really think that there's something about discomfort, Camille, that discomfort is what we need to kind of go towards, because that really is where the learning happens. If you're too comfortable, if you know what's happening in every minute of every day, and you can do your job with your eyes closed, then it's time to move on. Then it's time to find something that challenges you more, where you can give more. So these days, I'm walking towards the fear, towards the discomfort.
And then the announcement of the book.
Yes.
And so I gotta say, when I heard the book was coming out, I thought, okay, there are 3 things that I wonder if she'll talk about.
Yeah.
1, your divorce.
Yeah.
2, that police interaction. And
Yes.
3, what really went down at Canada AM. Okay. Now, I won't spoil it for people who haven't picked up the book yet. But to my surprise, you talked about all of those things. Because I thought, okay, there could be some things that she holds back. And I also thought, a lot of, celebrities like yourself often employ ghostwriters. But reading this book, I could tell that this came directly from your head, because I could hear your voice while I was reading it. So on the first point about the end of your marriage, what I found so interesting is that in talking about what ended it, there was just one short story that you told about what happened after your car accident, which for me anyway, explained the entire thing without having to go into the details at all. And what it showed is that you were married, but you were alone. And I think a lot of women might resonate with that. And I wonder, how did that entire experience change you from realizing it was over to accepting it was over and then to actually ending it? How has that all impacted you? Are you a different Marci now? Is it the emancipation of Marci? How are you different after going through that?
Well, being alone is something, isn't it? I sometimes think, wow, I never felt alone before I got married, or lonely.
Mhm.
So in order to, to get married and feel that way is something.
Mhm.
It just came to a point, Camille, and I know that there are a lot of people, women that go through this, and this is why I want to write about it, because I wanted to be honest. And I've had a lot of people get in touch and say, "Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head," because it's stuff we don't speak about. And I knew that in writing this book, I was either going to write it fully, meaning honestly, put my feelings on the page, whether they were good or bad or hurtful or whatever, or I wasn't going to do it at all.
Mhm.
And so, uh, who am I now? I'll tell you, so much has happened in these last couple of years. It's almost as if I've accelerated something, completely accelerated something where it's, you're going to just fulfill everything. So
Mhm.
anything that you couldn't do, you're going to do now. And I think that says something. I'm more confident in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I think I'm not willing to sit on the sidelines. I'm wanting to speak up in ways I never have, and
Mhm.
so that is changed. I think I just kind of had accepted my lot in life.
Mhm.
I had thought, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be with. And then 50 was coming
Mhm.
around the corner, and I thought, I don't know. I don't think I want to live the second half of my life the way I lived the first. I need to make some changes, starting with my marriage.
Mhm. That's a lot.
Mm.
2020 has been so
It's been
much
a
for me.
lot.
Like, listen,
It's
I
been
can't
a lot.
listen. It's like 5 years packed into one for you.
It is. It
So,
is.
so Canada AM. Before this book, I don't think you had ever spoken publicly
No,
about the behind the scenes of when the
no,
show was canceled. Now,
no.
full disclosure, I know a bit because I was going through it alongside Marci, having been working on the show as a
Yes.
producer for almost 3 or 4 years when it was canceled.
Yeah, 4 years.
But I didn't
Yeah.
know what had happened from your perspective. I mean, you had, I think it was 48 hours, 24 hours notice to end the show on the air, live on the air, and
Yeah.
then just pick up and move on to the social and smile and nod along as if everything was okay. But everything was not okay, was it? Like, what were you
Everything
going
was
through?
everything was
Yeah.
not okay. Everything was not okay. And Cam, I didn't know I was going to the social.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing. I knew that I had a job. I
Hmm.
just didn't know what the job would be. And I knew that I was moving locations for that job. I was leaving news and going to production where shows like The Social and E-Talk and Marilyn take place, but I didn't know what I'd be doing.
Hmm.
So the first thing I did when the show ended, I went away. I remember missing Jeff Hutchison, my co-host's, um, you know, party, his retirement party, and just talking to him and saying, "Jeff, I'm so sorry. I love you, but I've got to go.
And
I
where did
need to
you go?
just have some time." I went to Jamaica. I
Hmm.
went to Montego Bay, and I was in this little hut
Hmm.
for about 10 days. And I took a diary with me, um, and a few other things, and said, "It's time for me to go. I've got to leave." And I just thought about life. I thought about what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do, who was important, all of the things, all of those things. And I came back with a better sense of what my plan would be.
Hmm.
And it was filling in on the social for several weeks, and then I was made the permanent guest co-host because they had a co-host for a while
Hmm.
because Trace had been off,
Hmm.
Tracy Melchor. And then it was being offered the job some months later, and completely different because of course I was used to news. I was used to a news-based show, and that meant telling other people's stories, not my own. But
Hmm.
on the social, it meant sharing my own stories. It meant weighing in with my opinions, and my career thus far hadn't been opinion based, but it became that real quick.
Can I ask you an uncomfortable question?
Go ahead.
So we're friends and people know that we're friends. So when you
Yeah.
switched over to the social, I got a lot of messages
Yeah.
from people feeling like, why is she on the social now? This is so beneath her.
Oh my gosh. I had family members say that.
Okay. Okay.
Let alone, I had family members saying, "You're a journalist and you're going where? You're going to do what?" And I thought to myself, but what an opportunity at this time,
Mhm,
when I looked at the political landscape,
mhm,
when I looked at what it meant to be Black in Canada, and me being, a Black female host and having a voice with this very big microphone,
mhm,
all of that aside, it was the number one show in daytime in our country.
mhm,
And I thought, my gosh, I can share some things. So I saw it completely differently,
mhm,
and then looked at these amazing women,
mhm.
in Lainey and Mel and Synth and Jesse, and thought, my gosh, yeah, I'm in. And I'm going to do it my way. And I did.
And you did. So one of the, I would say, the defining moments of your time there was your decision to speak out about what happened on your driveway with a Toronto police officer. I think that really catapulted you into the national conversation in a different way.
Yeah.
You got called all kinds of names and almost overnight went from this like media darling to quote unquote a race baiter, all of these types of things. Did
Yeah.
you expect that level of vitriol? And what do you think it revealed about who we really are as a country?
We like to say that racism happens over there to the south of us. We like to say these things don't happen here. There isn't, most political leaders in this country and leaders, period, won't even say that there's systemic racism in Canada. They're uncomfortable. Justin Trudeau is the only one that I know of that has, right? They won't even say it. So we're very uncomfortable with race and speaking about it. And so, did I expect that kind of vitriol, Cam? No, I didn't. Did I get used to it? Yeah, I did, and real fast, because it continued. It continued until the day I left the
Mhm.
social. It continued for
Right
years,
now. Mhm.
and continues now. It continues now. But I obviously struck a chord, and an important chord, because that meant conversations. And for every person that came for me and said I was a race baiter, there was a university class or someone in high school said, "Hey, we're talking about you today. We're talking about your article, or we're having a discussion about, systemic racism, or we're having a discussion about growing up Black," or whatever it is. And I thought, I absolutely did the right thing. I couldn't not write. I had to write that piece.
Mhm.
And the other part is that, and I've spoken about this too, people don't understand the trauma that Black people carry. And when I say trauma, it's the trauma of that's hidden,
Mhm.
but it's the trauma of seeing your loved ones go through things. Every Black man in my life has been stopped by the police.
Mhm.
My best friend was involved in a police stop when, he's a journalist, broadcast journalist. He was stopped years ago, thrown to the ground. So you carry the trauma of that having happened to loved ones. And so when this happened to me in my driveway, and I was stopped in my driveway, and there was a certain tone in that officer's voice, I was afraid. And that is the one thing, Camille, that no one asked me. People were very quick to say, this wasn't about race. It wasn't about this. You didn't stop at a stop sign. That's why. But the tone and the fear that I felt, and also the whole idea of Lloyd and Dash being inside the house and not seeing what was happening on the driveway, and me thinking, I don't want Lloyd to come out here
Mhm.
because Lloyd will not be happy seeing
Mhm.
me in this position, and who knows what could happen. So
Definitely.
my thought, right? My
Yeah.
thought was keep them inside and
Right.
I'll handle this. I just didn't handle it very well. And I was fearful. I was mad.
Mhm.
I thought, why am I being asked these questions? You
Again,
know,
I think of what a lot of
again,
people didn't know is that there was
again.
a lot leading up to this.
It's a lot leading up to this. I've
You
been
have been
stopped
stopped.
several
Yeah.
times before. And you know what? It's kind and here's the thing. I shouldn't have to roll around in a suit
Mhm.
and dress to the nines. I was wearing jeans, a
Mhm.
sweater, my Converse. And that's how I am when I'm not working. And that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter at all. So to be asked while holding my license and insurance that clearly states my address, if I live here,
Mhm.
whether this is my vehicle, I take great offense. I do. And I know people will say, well, that's protocol. And I say protocol has to change.
Hmm. A lot has to change.
A
So
lot has to change.
now you're within the literal halls of power. What do you feel like is going to be one of your main priorities? What is on your mind when you wake up every day before you go to bed?
Mm. There's so many people that I met, young people, while campaigning, who completely said to me, I have no interest in government. I
Mm.
have no interest in voting. I can vote, but I don't vote. And I said to them, why? What's it? Because I'm not represented. Nobody really cares about me. It's just one big machine kind of thing. And those conversations became very long conversations. And I said to them, I want to change your mind about that, because the only reason I'm here is to serve you. And you are part of my constituency. That means I represent you. So it's about taking those voices back, and I have, and saying, listen, this is who is completely disenfranchised, who feels they aren't part of this pie. How do we get them back? How do we reach them? What do we need to do to get them to the table? They need to see more of themselves. And so it's that piece. Homelessness is also a huge issue in my riding. And so affordable housing, working on that, making sure that people have the basics, the necessities. We are human beings. Everybody should have a place to live.
Mhm.
Everybody should have food to eat. And then small businesses as well. So many people, family businesses, who've been hurt by COVID-19, who aren't sure they can keep their doors open, and this is their life's work. That's seriously problematic too. So understanding that that needs to be fixed. People need help. And so those would be my priorities.
Amazing. Marci, I know I speak on behalf of all the Bi Blacks community, our audience, all of our listeners and readers. We are so proud of you. And if you ever feel low when you're in those halls, remember, I mean, you've got a whole huge community behind you. We're applauding you, and you're standing on the shoulders of some great, amazing men and women who've come before you, and we have no doubt you're going to do us all proud. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Camille, for the great questions and for your friendship. Thank you.